It's Monday. It's time for Worst of the Week, and we're going back to the Spider-Man well. Doc loved the Spider-Man manga last week. This week, we're going to review ASM 31, also known as ASM 925, from Zeb Wells and about 17 other artists on it. How you doing, Doc?
I did not want to read this. I really did not want to read this. You made me read this.
Doc, it's a special plus-size $10 comic book. It's right up your alley. You're a Spider-Man guy.
When half of the comic book is actually, it's the exact same thing that they do in every one of these overpriced books, where they'll do little 3-page mini stories, 3, 4, 5-page, and all they are is essentially trailers for whatever other new book they're about to launch. They're trying to coattail ride ASM sales into making their other book, I guess, a success, but
creating awareness, Doc.
Except for the fact that every single time those stories suck because they can't put anything of consequence in them, or else it'll need to be in the first issue.
Yeah, it's not an actual story. Like I said, it's a vignette. It's not even a backup story. It's pretty weird. This thing sucks. It's supposed to be the wedding of the year, Doc, because we're getting Tombstone's daughter marrying somebody else's son.
Robbie Robertson.
And I don't know. I don't think they delivered on this one, Doc. It doesn't feel like this was worth the $10 they made me pay for it. And it feels like I bought some toilet paper, but not good 3-ply toilet paper like the 1-ply stuff you got at school.
For everyone that hasn't read this yet, please don't waste your money. But hey, look, it's another swerve where they don't get married.
Of course, you knew they couldn't actually deliver a wedding on a wedding issue.
I know.
Let's get into the details. It turns out at least 20 pages of the 44 pages of story in here are complete bullshit. It's just the bachelor party and the bachelorette party, and wouldn't you know it, Tombstone's daughter and all of her villainous friends are the bee's knees. They're the cock of the walk. They're having so much fun on their girls' night. They're partying. And then Robbie's having his bachelor party, and Peter's the only one that showed up. I didn't even realize this was Peter at first. I just thought it was another friend of his. I finally caught on. And they are the biggest losers in the entire world, and all that you can think of during the first 20 pages of this, because that's how long it takes to tell a goddamn bachelor party at Marvel, is why would she ever marry this fucking loser?
Why would anyone ever marry either of these losers? Peter does the bachelor party in Atlantic City, and they just go to some dive bar and drink water. It turns into this fight between Robbie and Peter about how Peter failed Robbie again, setting up the bachelor party. And Peter makes all these excuses about how, oops, I forgot, and I didn't give them enough notice. Granted, they do later on in the issue, whenever there's the resolution of the conflict, they have Peter and Robbie talking. Turns out Peter did actually try to arrange the party. He did reach out to the friends, but all
friends
of them
didn't want him to marry a villain's daughter.
Exactly. So Peter decides to be he was actually being the noble friend by taking the bullets for all of Robbie's other friends that were basically throwing a temper tantrum about who he was marrying and saying, I'm not coming to the bachelor party and I'm not coming to the wedding. So Peter lied to him so that he didn't get mad at his other friends and figured, I'll take the brunt of it. That is a very Peter Parker thing to do, and I will grant them that.
Like I said, 20 pages, way too much. This could have been done in 4 pages. You made your goddamn point. At the end, we do see Black Cat. She's having a girls' night out, and she ends up meeting up with Peter after this, and it turns out that they both been going through the motions. She kind of feels bad that she never even tried to make him into a bad guy, never tried to tempt him to do anything wrong. And she's gotten bored with the relationship, and she basically tells him, c'est la vie, loser.
He never tried to convince her to stop doing crime, which tells him that he doesn't really actually care about her. So Peter eventually just sadly takes it like the bitch he is these days.
Well, absolutely. And I just don't understand, why did they even introduce the relationship? This isn't even really a send-off. There's not even any conflict. They just decided not to do it anymore. What was the point of the last 2 years?
Yeah, well, what was the point of the big emotional story where Peter has to tell Black Cat how much he loves her and how much he thinks of Mary Jane as just like a sister now, what was the point of that issue now if they're just going to be like, okay, and then it dies in, like, it goes over like a fart in church. It just withered and died. There was no major conflict. It just stops.
Yeah, which is probably the best way that you can really describe this entire ASM run from Zeb Wells is it goes over like a fart in church. Like, whatever, man. So we get to the wedding. Everybody's there. Peter's there. Everyone's ready for the nuptials. Tombstone's there. All the villains are lined up. But we don't actually get a wedding because it's comic books. And why? If you're going to actually promote that this is the wedding issue of the year, would you actually provide a wedding itself? This guy shows up. I've read that his name is Shotgun, but I'm not even sure about that, Doc. This isn't a villain that I ever heard of before. He ends up confronting Tombstone. It turns out when he shoots him, Tombstone is no longer bulletproof, and there's a confrontation, and Spider-Man shows up to save the day, but not save the wedding.
Maybe he shoots him with some special kind of bullets that somehow manage to work their way through Tombstone's skin. I don't know. And, so suddenly now Tombstone's bleeding, and there's chaos, and stray bullets are going flying into the crowd. So Peter gets his Aunt May out of there, shows up as Spider-Man to take this guy down. Madame Mask asks whether or not this is Hammerhead's doing, and Hammerhead says, nope, it's not, but this is, and then blows up her limo.
So we might have lost Madame Mask and Tombstone potentially at this wedding.
Yeah, distinctly possible.
They took 44 pages to basically say nothing. 20 pages of it is bachelorette party shenanigans and bullshit. A couple of pages to cut out Peter, and then a few pages of action to where they don't even deliver the wedding of the year that they promised they were going to deliver here. And it's $10 for that. And the rest is basically just vignettes, setting up other stuff. I guess a few of them of note. One would be the one with Kamala Khan, and she wants you and everyone to know she's a member of the X-Men now. She must say it at least 3 or 4 times in the 3 or 4 pages of this story. And Peter, he takes his mask and he says, I usually say this for kids with incurable diseases. And then he shows it's Peter Parker, and then she tells him what a nerd he is and always has been.
Every single panel in that story, she was drawn with crazy eyes. He decided to show the girl that just came back, that was just reincarnated, his face, while she is giving him nothing but crazy eyes, literally while sitting there and having a conversation. He thought it was a brilliant idea to unmask in front of her so that she can insult him and call him a nerd.
So, Doc, do you think he only does that for kids with incurable diseases because he wants them to feel better, or because he knows they're going to die and can't tell anyone his identity?
I think it's because he knows that they're going to die and can't tell anybody his identity.
I don't think Zeb Wells really understood what he was implying there.
No,
I mean?
I really don't think so either. Like, hey,
what a son of a bitch.
I'm going to tell you a secret that you're going to take to your grave. This is like, I mean, 2 can keep a secret. I guess if one of them's dead.
I thought that was a weird wording choice on the Kamala story.
Yeah, really? That's the way you want to go with this? That seems to imply something weird. Never mind. I don't want to know. I think it's weird that he's taking his mask off in front of children at all.
That one was strange. Let's get on to this MJ Paul story, which I know nobody was actually looking forward. It turns out MJ and Paul are not happy now because the 2 kids have disappeared. She's checking up on them, and she's having some rage happening, and it turns out she's Jackpot now. And this basically just reminds you that she's a superhero in her own right now, Doc, and there's no real point to this story because it's already been established.
They're having troubles, and I guess this is supposed to be kind of like paralleling, the way that a lot of marriages fall apart if they lose a child kind of thing, but they lost 2 children that never existed, that they didn't have, and who cares?
I wish they'd figure out who Paul was, because I remember in one comic book, he looked like Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger. And then in another comic book, he looked like Mark Zuckerberg.
And then in another, he looked like Sean King.
Kind of looks like James Tynan now.
Yeah. It's just
a ponytail.
It's just slightly chubby, man bun wearing generic Portland hipster.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like they have a Paulverse thing going on where there's just different variants of Paul. I guess the last thing I've known, there's going to be another Spider-Woman series. I don't know why, but apparently it's going to focus on the fact that someone took her baby.
Hey, remember when she was fighting crime pregnant?
I guess because she was pregnant in that Spider-Verse movie recently, they think it's cool again.
Isn't it funny whenever she went and just put her baby at risk by fighting crime while she was very, very heavily pregnant? Wasn't that great?
Well, apparently she cares now because someone has stolen her baby. And I guess that's going to be the impetus for Spider-Woman. I don't know why they're doing this series, but I'm sure Stephanie Phillips will be doing it.
Well, there's going to be some Stephanie doing it. We just don't know which one.
So that's going to be our review of Amazing Spider-Man 31, also known as ASM 925, $10, 100 pages of absolute garbage. The wedding of the year doesn't happen. 20 pages of Bachelor and Bachelorette nonsense. Spider-Man getting cucked out, and a bunch of trailers for other stories that are going to happen later that aren't even going to happen in Amazing Spider-Man. It's just... these guys have no shame.
No, they really don't. It's just, hey, look at these things that aren't even really that exciting. You should totally go and buy this other book that is not going to be even remotely exciting. Please.
Doc, are you recommending this one? I'm not going to recommend you part with your $10 on this one.
No, I would have considered this book for $4, even at double sized, or well, quadruple sized, I guess. I'd have considered it at normal cover price, but at $10, not a chance.
I wouldn't consider it normal price either because the art's not even that good for the most part.
All of the backup vignette trailers are atrocious. So no, don't buy this book. Don't read this book, and definitely don't read past page 44.
If you're stuck here and you're like, but Wes, I actually wanted to hear about a Spider-Man comic book I could actually read and enjoy. It just so happens Doc and I reviewed Spider-Man Fake Red, a manga. It's only 2 volumes long. Definitely check this one out right here because this was an absolute badass Spider-Man comic book that you will not see from Marvel Comics themselves. There's also a link in the video description.